Hello and welcome to another episode of the djproject Criterion Collection. And here we're going to talk about Spine 484, Jeanne Dielman, 23 du Commerce, 1004 Bruxelles, directed by Chantal Akerman, 1975. I got this film, again, out of curiosity and trying to expand and broaden and deepen my cinematic horizons, and also reading the synopsis and what it covers and how it was told. I had this feeling that it could help me with my own film work. Not to say that I am trying to do the same thing that Akerman did with Jeanne Dielman, but that there was just I knew that there would be something in it that could help inform me on how best to portray the character. In this case, it's with Walk in Silence, and particularly with Anna in the first part, in the beginning of the film. So, and it turns out that I was right. And so, if I do get a chance to make that, there you go. There's a connection right there. Now, for the film itself, this is another film where it's deceptively simple. The story is, well, actually, this is really about the character. Jeanne Dielman, played by Delphine Seyrig, again from last year, Marienbad, The Discreet Charm of Bourgeoisie, and a few other titles that is not immediately coming to mind at this point, but a fixture of European cinema, particularly of the 1970s. But anyways, Jeanne Dielman is a widowed mother who lives actually this is kind of implied, but she's most comfortable in on a rote routine life. It involves upkeeping the house, keeping up the house, cooking for her son, and turning the occasional trick. Yes, she does do this as a means of income, and doing whatever is needed to keep up the house. And you see her over the course of 3 days. And the first day, it's a window into her routine, and then the second day is where there's the slightest variation that will then lead to the third day, which leads to its the only dramatic act in the entire film. The rest of it is very, very subdued, and it can either be really, really engaging or really, really frustrating, depending on how you choose to look at it. If you go into this expecting a drama, you're going to be disappointed with it. Because that's not what it's really about. It's a couple of things. For starters, Akerman, this film in particular, it was the culmination of what she did while she was in New York. In the first part of the 70s, and particularly when she got acquainted to a lot of formalist filmmakers, most especially Michael Snow. And the idea with formalist filmmaking is it's definitely more about the structure of the film rather than the drama. And I think what appealed to Akerman was how you can film space, and really it's just filming the space more or less on its own terms, and that whatever is happening within that space is not necessarily motivated by anything dramatic. It's just there, and that's what you get in Jeanne Dielman, is that she's someone who is there. And this is not to demean her. This is not to demean her character at all. It's really you see. I try to avoid cyclizations because there's a supplement in here where it's actually some it was actually on set footage, or like behind the scenes footage that was shot on set. And a lot of the interactions between Chantal Akerman and Delphine Seyrig is, for Akerman, it was all about the action. It was making sure that the actions were done in a particular way, and it was her trying to explain what these actions are supposed to be, and just in a more not so much why the actions were done. It's more how to do it, and it was certainly informed by her own upbringing. She even called this film a love letter to her mother, and wanting to kind of showcase the kind of woman she was, and so forth. Not that she'll ever do the dramatic act that appears at the end, but it's just kind of the way she does things and such. But anyways, but Akerman avoids trying to come up with motivations and rationale for it, because that's not particularly what interested her. It was not psychology so much as she was interested. I think she was more just interested in showing a state of being that comes in through the action, and letting some subtlety at play, where you don't need to overtly state that, okay, this is, this emotional, or she's in this particular emotional state, or she's going from one place to the other. It's trying to avoid that kind of dramatic artifice. It was just more of just having her exist in the space, and having her do what she does in the space without any attempt to try to dramatize it, which again may sound either really, really exciting or really, really frustrating. If you go into it expecting a drama, you're probably going to be disappointed with this. But if you are interested, and again, this is why I enjoy seeing a lot of different films and a lot of different types of films, is to see what is possible in the world of cinema. And I think that what makes this really compelling is that it does, it does showcase the character without any kind of judgment whatsoever, or it just kind of you're there observing, and done with a certain sense of a detachment, but also with some measure of sympathy as well. But it's not, again, it's not melodramatic or anything. It's if it is melodramatic, it's more formalist. I don't know if it'd be fair to call it a formalist melodrama, but that's not really it. It's just you just see her in what she does, and which then leads into the reception of the film, and how this was the film that has been kind of a blessing and a curse for Akerman, because this was, on the one hand, this was the film that pretty much put her on the cinematic map, but at the same time, this has also been the film that has defined the rest of her work, and upon which future films are judged. How much is this like Jeanne Dielman? I think for her, it was just something that she felt strongly about at the time, and that I think there was a part of her that just wanted to move on and to do other things, but others have said, no, this is really good. You should not that she should do more of it, but it's like, why give that up? You've started something really great. Why not just fill it up? But then again, I don't know what else you can do with it. I mean, there's only so many ways that you can you can show somebody cooking. And this, now going back to the reception of it, the reason why this was such a big deal is that it's all the domestic chores, all the domestic life is now front and center, whereas beforehand any of those things were more incidental events, and it's all subservient to a drama. So it's but here, because the subject is her life, and what she does is she maintains her house, she raises her son, and yes, she turns a she turns the occasional trick, which isn't shown on screen. It's all done. It's all done with suggestive shots, but even then, it's not all that much. It only shows, the closest you get is to at the very end, but it's done with for good reasons. But anyways, but it's because that life is now brought front and center. It was considered this big revelation or this big revolution in cinema, and it is hailed as a feminist film. And technically it is. It's about a woman. It was made by a woman. There was a predominantly female crew, which Akerman kind of thought it was sort of a mixed bag. But that's what she did. And so, yes, in that respect, it's a feminist film. But because the word itself is tainted by other political baggage, I don't think that this necessarily has a particular agenda. This is not meant to advance a particular cause or advance a particular position. It's merely just bringing the activities that most women find themselves doing into the forefront. And in that respect, it is most certainly a feminist film, whether it has any kind of agenda. And Akerman herself doesn't like to be called a feminist filmmaker herself, and I think she's also very resistant to having her films showcase political agendas. I think she's more interested in the art of it than trying to advance a particular cause. And or maybe she just doesn't like being put into a box, just like most of us. We don't like to be put into a box. So one more thing about the film itself. I didn't get into kind of how it's the reason why I say that this could be really what makes this particularly what can make this both exciting and frustrating at the same time is the running time. This is 201 minutes, 3 hours 20 minutes. And it's definitely an example of deliberate pacing, as it were, where it's events and everything are played out more in real time, and there's not this. There's a sense of time moving, but at the same time, it's not that there's any hesitancies to go from one thing to the next. If anything, the speed and the motivation is all from Jeanne, who lives for this routine and finds a certain comfort in this routine, and which she finds it particularly comforting. So it's just going through the motions and going through this life and going from one little moment to the next that's all predetermined and pre-planned, and there's safety and security and all those things. But it's played very deliberately. The camera hardly moves. I don't think it ever moves at all. It's locked down. It's at a very particular set framing, and in that respect, it kind of owes a bit to Ozu. I think more indirectly. I don't think she saw any of his films per se, but the style of it and also the height of the camera. It's more in line with her height, and she's fairly short, so it's I guess you could call it the Akerman shot as far as the way it plays out. But it's deliberately composed for the space. It's not composed for the action, which means there are points where Jeanne is doing something where she, like for instance, if she's making something in the kitchen, it's all fixated on this one section of the kitchen where you see the sink and the table, and she's going in from the cupboard or the refrigerator into some other parts. So in other words, she walks in and out of frame, but the camera just fixates on the space. So that's why I say that it's more about the space and whoever happens to be in it and utilizing the space. And it's much more of an observer effect rather than something where you have to necessarily feel some sympathy. But the paradox here is that from this objective viewpoint, you start to know who the object is, and you start to then form a relationship, and then it becomes subjective. So, but yes, if I would say that if you have the patience, and you it is, I would say that it is worth noting. At the very least, it's worth noting that it's there, and therefore it shows that there are wider possibilities to what you can do in cinema. And if you want to take that great leap of faith and see it for yourself, then by all means. But I also understand that if the thought of seeing something that's deliberately placed with the most minimal of drama, again, there's only one moment where where it constitutes a dramatic act, and everything else is just looking at not necessarily routine, but it's nuances in the routine. There's some minute variation, and it's similar in that respect to not necessarily minimalist music, but actually with drones, where you have a single note that's more often than not very textured, but it's in listening to the subtleties in the timbre and how it evolves over time. And that's probably the best way to describe it, is that you're seeing something that's played out consistently but has some minute variation that is the devil is all in the details. It's that kind of film, but it doesn't draw too much attention for itself. You have to be engaged in the subject in order to see it for yourself. So if you want to go through that kind of exercise, it's definitely worth viewing. So yeah, Jeanne Dielman. And until next time, take care.